Anyway, nice to meet everybody. I've met some of you already. I'm Sarah Schofield, head of email marketing at US Bank. Let me see if I can get this going here. Oh, yay. Okay, cool. I'm never good with these things. So I've been at the bank for about 2 years. My team manages full email deployment, massive, complex journey, structure, solutions, architectures, and deployment on those. On average, we send around 25 to 35 million emails a month, equaling about 80 to 90 campaigns. On a weekly basis, it runs anywhere from 14 to 30 on a busy time. So as you can imagine, we are churning through a lot of emails. And what those emails give us is data, right? And that's the theme of today, like Morgan was just talking about. We've talked about data, we've talked about how to manage our stakeholders, but how do we get that data with our stakeholders to answer the questions that they need to make the right decisions to grow their own business? So I'm gonna go through kind of our main challenge. I'm gonna talk about the bank for just a minute to give you guys an idea of who we are and what we are. But I'm gonna talk through our challenge, our main challenge, and then at the same time, talk through the steps that we took to get to the output and the final end goal of being able to have shareable, filterable, self-serve dashboards to give to our internal clients so they didn't have to come to us and use our resources when we don't have enough, because nobody ever has enough resources. So first things first, US Bank, is anybody a customer of ours? Yay, all right, there's a few. It's more of a Midwestern regional bank. However, we've got 70,000, it's actually about 74,000 employees across the globe actually, mainly corporate, branch, employees, et cetera. So we've got a pretty large organization, as you can imagine. It's heavily siloed and very structured. It's corporate America and it is financial industry. We have $587 billion in assets, which I think is always a pretty cool fun fact, and it's probably grown because this stat was, I think, from June of last year. We are, however, the 5th largest bank in the US, and we're actually continuing to grow. We just acquired another bank based in California, Union Bank. That final conversion happens over Memorial Day weekend. This is all public knowledge. It's all out there, so I'm not giving anything away on any means. So we're also, as the email team, we're going to be growing again come June 1st, and we're in the middle of, I won't even get into that chaos right now. But one of the best things about the bank is its culture, and the culture that we thrive in is helping others, being there for people, being accountable, and actually that's how I run my team, is making sure that we're accountable for the things that we're putting out there. And we were named in 2022 and 2021, one of the world's most ethical companies, and I'm very proud to say that I work for US Bank. It's pretty cool. It's boring, it's finances, but I'll be honest, it's probably one of the most challenging jobs I've ever had in my 25-ish years of working. And we are named one of the most admired companies in the world by Fortune, so I always think that's a fun stat too. But you guys don't want to know any more about that, but I want to talk to you guys about our journey in having nothing, basically, to being able to have self-service for our clients. So I'll start with our challenge, and I'll kind of give you how we're organized. My team is a shared service across the organization. We support, I would say, 75% of the emails that go out the door from the bank. We don't do the fraudulent stuff. We don't do a lot of the transactional, but we have, probably 500-ish journeys that are currently running with thousands of different variations of creative. That's a whole other story for a whole other time, and anytime you want to talk about it, I'm happy to talk about it. But the challenge with all that is that we run into all the time is, so what do we do with that? Okay, so we're sending all these emails. How are they performing, and how is that going to actually drive our success and support our business line's goals? The challenge is that we didn't have that. So, like I said, I've been at the bank for about 2 years. Within the first, I think, 3 days of me being there, I looked at my boss, who is no longer at the company, but I looked at my boss at the time, like, so what do we do for reporting? Here I am coming in all fresh and all excited to get started on this huge growing team. And she looked at me and she said, you need to talk to so-and-so and see what we get. And I'm like, okay. So I talked to a couple people internally on my team. I said, what do we do? Like, what have we been doing? And the team, it was 12 people at that time. We're now actually at 20, which is pretty cool. They said, well, we take that PDF from Marketing Cloud. So we use Salesforce Marketing Cloud as our ESP. We take that PDF, we download it, it's got the click data, it's got the open rates, some of the basic KPIs, and then we just send it over to the business line 7 to 10 days post deployment. And I'm going, and we're sending how many emails and doing this? This doesn't make any sense. And so that was like my number one priority when I first started there. I'm like, all right, we're gonna get reporting up and running, and we're gonna do it. And 2 years later, almost to the day of when I started, we finally have it. And I will tell you, it has been a very difficult road. I will not take credit for any of it except for driving it. I have an amazing team. They are the best, and they're the ones who did it. So I will give credit where credit is due 100% of the time. So essentially, where my goals and responsibilities for the email team and what we do is supporting our business lines is our number one priority, right? So we've got to use data to be able to make better cases for the business lines. So how's our wealth management team performing? How is mortgage performing? Consumer lending, digital experience, online banking, retail banking, payments. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So number one is we're always supporting our business lines. It is not fun sometimes, as I know some of the discussions regarding stakeholders and trying to manage them. And again, on the panel, I was sitting there nodding my head going, yep, it is probably the hardest part of my job personally. Making sure we have engagement. So not only working with email, but working with the other channels. So we actually work fairly close with our web teams and understanding what content is going out, because obviously we're creating landing pages and driving people to different spots on the website. So making sure that we're actually connecting those behaviors across multiple channels. The other piece is growth, right? Every company needs to grow, every group needs to grow, and so we need to be able to provide the data of what we're sending out the door to our business lines to enable them to continue to grow and continue building their businesses. And then reporting, right? Reporting is, at least in my eyes, our number one priority for my team, because if we don't have the reporting available, we can't actually make business decisions on that. And so our job is to really truly build those dashboards and report back and provide not only just the numbers, but also the strategic insights for our business partners. And again, we didn't have that. We have it now, which is fantastic, but it's taken a long time to get there. Let's see here. Where are we going? All right. So like I said, across a very siloed, very siloed environment. So you can imagine US Bank is a fairly large company. We have, we've got our brand marketing, we've got our digital marketing, we've got our digital office, we've got our digital marketing technology team, we've got our digital strategy. So as you can imagine, like I'm supporting 1 million people, and I refer to my job as I put out fires and I manage people, and that's about it. Meaning managing other people that I'm working with. So the corporate marketing team, corporate email team sits literally right in the middle of, we've got consumer marketing, we've got corporate communications. We do support our internal communications. They actually go into Marketing Cloud on their own because we don't have the time or the resources. And we also support our B2B marketing channel with another platform, Marketo. So we're dealing with a lot of fun stuff right now. But really how we're viewed from the company is that all we do is build and deploy emails and journeys, and we send out reports. So we could do one thing really well, and that's build and deploy emails and build out complex journeys. We have solutions architects, tech production, campaign managers on our team. So we have developers. So we have a wide array and we can support a lot, but the reporting piece, no resource. Literally no resource. I do not have a dedicated person for reporting. We just had a new head of consumer marketing start a couple of months ago, and I had a really difficult conversation with him because he was questioning our reporting. And I looked at him, I was like, hey, we don't have resources dedicated to any of this. And he was very disappointed and not very happy, and I have to continue conversations with him next week. But it's a true statement. Like if you don't have somebody who's dedicated to it, it's not gonna happen. So we are lucky in the fact that I've got a really solid analytical person on my team. She's actually a business analyst / solutions architect. But she committed to spending half of her time building out reports and figuring out a way to make this work for everybody, where it's not pulling a million things from us. And as part of that too, I talked about, our job is, yes, give the numbers, but we also need to be able to provide those insights back to the business line so they know we're the experts. We're the experts in email marketing. They're not. And I'm not saying that they're not. I'm just saying I'm sure we've all been in a situation where you're dealing with a marketing manager who is much more of a generalist. I've been focused on email for a majority of my career, so kind of like, yep, that's great. Let's give you some other insights on how to improve on this and optimize. So we actually kicked off quarterly business reviews with our internal business partners. I have an agency background, so my mind is always looking at it like, all right, they're our clients, so we need to provide them exactly what I would expect from my agency. It's the same thing, just because we're internal doesn't make it any different. So we started building and putting together these quarterly business reviews, and one of the managers on my team looked at me, she's like, Sarah, these reports take like 8 to 10 hours just to build, just to get the base level performance numbers, just trends. And it was a nightmare. And she was like dying after we did the first one. We now have 3 running. And because of that, that actually spurred our desire and need and realized there's a huge gap. We don't have a dashboard just for us. If somebody asked me a year ago what our overall email benchmarks were for the bank, I couldn't give them that information. And that's a huge problem. You should be able to, as a marketer, whether your email, social, doesn't matter, you should be able to have that information at the tip of your fingertips. Maybe not on the top of your head, but you should be able to access it very quickly. So that spurred all these different conversations internally. So I approached my team, a couple of people on the team. I said, how do we do this? How can we get to this information? This is ridiculous. Like, we've got to be able to get to it. So I'm going to try to figure out what my next slide is here. Sorry. There we go. And just so you know, sometimes the slides may not match up with as I'm going down the storyline. So I'm just gonna put it that way, because it always changes. You turn it in like a week before, and you go, oh wait, I thought about that. So anyway, so I was talking about just getting the benchmarks and getting that data. So we actually have a SharePoint site that is obviously open to all internal employees. And it had been outdated. It was just some information about the email team. And so this woman on my team, she manages our campaign operations team, and she said, I'm gonna update the SharePoint site, and I'm gonna put our benchmarks on there. So instead of us having to go back and go, okay, what are the numbers when we're getting the questions from our business lines, it was there at their fingertips and available. They could go, we'd be like, all right, here's the SharePoint site, go check it out. And now that is continually updated all the time, every quarter, so we have full purview of what is actually going on, at least on a quarterly basis. But then at the same point, we're like, all right, well, we need more information on this. So as you can imagine, again, very siloed, and that's a theme here with at least my organization, and it sounds to me like there's a lot of you who are also in very siloed organizations. So we've got data sitting, we've got media data, we've got email data, we've got our web and app data, and then we've got all the other data sources, our sources of truth. We've got, I did this similar presentation, and I had the full funnel of all the different data streams that we have, and I didn't want to make your eyes go buggy today. So I kept that one out. If anybody wants to see it, I'm happy to share it. But then we also have the team silos. So not only just the business lines are siloed, we also have the paid media team and the email team and the SEO team and then the content team, and then we've got our analytics team, and then we've got our data scientist team, and it's all over the place. So how do we get to the goals of having that unified view of marketing, performance, customer engagement? That's the key factor here, right? And then how do we get to real-time performance insights? Everybody wants that. Everybody wants to know exactly how things are, what is happening at the exact right time. And then we also need to get to the point of data-driven alignment and data governance. And that's the one thing. Data governance is actually pretty huge, especially when you're dealing with mass amounts of data, is you need to have alignment on what data is actually needed. And you also need to make sure that it's accurate and verified, because I won't even get into some of the war stories that I've had with some of that. So we have all these things in play, right? We've got data in multiple places. We've got channels across the board. We've got business lines in different places. And for me personally, if ever there's a massive challenge, and this was a pretty massive challenge, again, it took us 2 years, I take a step back and go, all right, how can we do this in bite-sized pieces and make sure that we get the right information for our stakeholders? So we actually utilized our quarterly business reviews, our QBRs, with our business lines to get feedback on what we were providing from them. So we didn't have these dashboards, we barely had our benchmarks in place, and we were still doing the inconsistent PDF, send back to the business line 7 to 10 days post deployment. Because we didn't really know what they all wanted. Wealth wants something different than mortgage. Mortgage wants something different than consumer lending. Consumer lending wants something different than the B2B space. So we really sat down and not only requested feedback, and we still do every QBR. We actually have 3 next week, so it's always a constant. It's progress, not perfection, right? It's finding out exactly what people want so we can continue to give them what they need and what they want, and share with them what they think that they need, but they may not, and that whole thing. Anyway, so back to this. So we really, truly had to sit down and talk with the stakeholders, like our leads, and I meet with a couple of our business line partners, probably either on a weekly basis or a monthly basis or quarterly basis, just a standing meeting. Hey, what's going on? What are we doing? Is there anything that we're not doing to help support you? Is there anything that you need from us? And then what do you have as a larger strategic goal for Q2, Q3, Q4 this year? So getting their information, was understanding what they needed, was a key factor there. And then going back to identifying overall benchmarks. How are we doing as a bank, right? We can look at mortgage, we can look at wealth, we can look at consumer lending, but they're asking me, well, how do we stack up to the rest of the bank? And I'm going, well, I don't even know how our email program is performing. I don't even know our general unsubscribe rates. I do now, I promise. But we needed to understand performance at that top-down level, right? Because as I'm getting questions from my executive leadership, it's the same thing, right? And then we take that top-down approach and then dig in. So we've got that macro approach and continue to dig into those micro levels. So then it's, all right, great, we've got our standard KPIs, delivered, opens, clicks, and Sarah, you talked about not wanting to use opens. I hate open rate. It is like the bane of my existence, and that's all everybody cares about. And it's the biggest challenge, so I might want to talk to you later. But the biggest KPI is conversions. App starts, app submits, apps approved, apps denied, and I'm just using that as one of them. We had no way of getting that information because that's in a completely different system, right? That's in our main database with a completely different team. All we have is email metrics. So we had to sit down and figure out, and again, I've got some really smart people on my team, working cross-functional teams with 3 or 4 different groups, our CRM team, our IT team, our analytics team, and then our team, trying to figure out how to pull that conversion data into our reporting. And we got there. And then from there, and this just launched in January, so we had our dashboards ready to go for, I think, our 3rd round of QBRs, so probably about a year ago. I think it was probably June or July of last year. We had our internal dashboards. And then everybody kind of got wind of it, and we'd provide that information and we give it to them, and they were like, this is great, this is awesome, can we access it? And so we're going, I don't want you in our system. I don't want a stakeholder in our system at all. And just to be clear, and I'll put it to the side, is we brought in Datorama from Salesforce Marketing Cloud 2.5 years ago, and we are finally actually using it. So that's the platform that we do all of our reporting in, or for a majority of it. So I forgot to mention that up front. And we're like, I don't want so-and-so from Wealth logging into Salesforce and logging into Datorama and getting their own information. So light bulb goes off, and we're all talking internally, and it's like, why don't we put it in their hands? Why don't we give it to them? Is there a way to do this where we can provide them with a link? That's all they have. They can download it. They can print it to PDF. They can export the data. They can do whatever they want with it. And this woman on my team figured it out because she's that good. So now we have self-serve dashboards that are available to our clients. And this is an example of what one of them looks like. I tried to block it out, but I was looking at my computer screen, so it was a little big. So hopefully you can't see it. But anyway, so this is an exact dashboard that we've used. Yep, I just want to make sure that those were actually showing up. You can't see, everything's blurry, so I'm not too concerned about privacy information at this point. But this was actually the biggest expansion of reporting at the bank, not only even email, but across the board. So there's another group that's been working on MTA reports for about 2 years. Those reports are working, but they're 3 months delayed. These are real time, 100% real time, 100% accurate. So they've got benchmarks, they've got the bank benchmarks, they've got the business line benchmarks, performance over time metrics, comparison metrics, campaign specific, and the list goes on and on and on. And the best part about all this, I'm gonna see if I can reach, is if you can, I don't know. Anyway, at the top, at each one of these corners, if you can hear me, at each one of those top corners is all filters. Everything is filterable. We can filter it by message classification. So we can look at it by servicing or marketing, because obviously those will skew the numbers either way. We can look at it by deepening, acquisition, retention, what is it? And those are all classified based on our intake process. So I can talk to that afterwards. I don't want to dive too far into that. If anybody has any questions, feel free to chat with me. We can, by marketing segment, day, week, month, quarter, year, we can go back 2 years now. We can look at sub-products. So if we've got consumer lending, we can look at auto, we can look at HELOC, we can break it down by the sub-product. And again, we worked very closely with our stakeholders to be able to get this information. And it is partially on them to provide us with the right information. So again, good data gives good data, or good inputs give good data, or however that goes. We can look at it by journey. We can look at it by campaign name, everything. It's actually one of the coolest dashboards I've ever been a part of. I remember 20 years ago or 15 years ago, creating dashboards by myself, like manually updating every single week for my boss in an Excel spreadsheet, and it was a nightmare. So this is fantastic. But we have to pull it in from multiple places, right? So we've got Salesforce Marketing Cloud data. So we've got our email performance metrics from Marketing Cloud. We utilize Adobe Analytics because that's what the rest of the company uses. So we can get that last touch attribution for applications, for digital enrollments, for other conversion areas that we have. And then we look at our internal databases with our analytics team as well to look at overall touch point attribution. So we're not fully in the multi-touch because that is actually falling into a different group, but we're getting there. And then the next step is that we are actually, I think the conversation actually started last week, or implementation of kickoff implementation started last week. We're now pulling in SEO data, which is actually even cooler. So we can actually look at what is happening on the website, what traffic is coming in through the website, and how that's impacting email. And all it is API connections. It's pretty easy. I think it's Brightwave from an SEO standpoint. So it's actually pretty cool. And as of today, we have 13 self-serve dashboards. We have 7 operational reports. So not only do we provide this to our stakeholders, my boss's boss, our CMO is asking for different numbers that we don't necessarily have at the tip of our hands or tip of our fingertips. But now we have the ability, so we've gone in and made custom dashboards for ourselves to be able to answer the hard questions that we get every day. I cannot tell you how many times we get, what did this perform, or how did this perform, or how's this doing against us? And then now we have 3 quarterly business review reports that we are able to share with our stakeholders. And so these are just some screenshots of some of them. Everywhere there's a gray block, there's a number behind it. But otherwise, so it's been chaos. It's been, I'm not kidding, it's been a 2-year process. It's been a lot. It's getting into the details is probably about a 2-hour presentation. So I was trying to condense everything down really short. But I love this quote by Deepak Chopra, is all great changes are preceded by chaos. I truly believe that. When you're running into chaos, you take a step back, you take small bites, crawl, walk, run, and continue to go, the standard crawl, walk, run. So if there are any questions, I am more than happy. I could talk about this all day. It was seriously one of the coolest projects I've ever been a part of. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
All right. So questions. I mean, truly is remarkable to pull that off and have those dashboards. I know lots of companies talk about it and dream about it, and then to see what it actually takes is inspiring. So congratulations, sort of. All right. Any questions? So my biggest question was, you mentioned very early on that you still don't have a dedicated reporting resource.
Nope.
So how did you carry the ball forward, even though it took 2.5 years? How did that kind of move forward, and do you think that would have been different if there was obviously a dedicated resource there?
Absolutely. If we had a resource that was 100% dedicated to it, we would have done this in 6 months. And we actually had 2 people working on it. We did bring in Salesforce Professional Services to help us with it at the beginning, and they weren't getting the job done. And so we also use Lev Consulting, which is a Cognizant company, and they help us when they're basically an extension of our team. So we utilize them for architecture, tech production, et cetera. But we pulled them in, and we're meeting with them every week, going through step by step, because we ran into a situation, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Datarama, we bought a certain amount of rows, right? And we were at 110% of data usage or row usage in like 3 months, and we would have to go back and clean out the data. And actually that was the biggest hurdle, is just cleaning up the data, and that alone took like 6 months, and a lot of discussion with the consulting agency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah.
Wonderful job.